All right, here we are with Terence Kwok, founder of Humanity Protocol. Terence, it's so great to have you on the Defiant. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Camilla.
So, Humanity Protocol is looking to solve one of the big missing pieces, I would say, of Web3 and crypto, which is a decentralized identity. Terence, can you provide just a brief overview of what Humanity Protocol does and after that we can get into all the details?
Sure. So Humanity Protocol is a recent project that we launched and announced back in February, March. What we're doing is we're building a ZK EVM layer 2 specifically designed for the open identity. And what we mean by that is I think identity is one of the things that a lot of people have talked about for, as a key blockchain use case, since 2015, 16, but nobody's really been able to solve it. With Humanity Protocol, what we're doing is we're creating a chain specifically designed with features for identity, starting with what we call proof of humanity. So checking and proving that you are a unique human being and using that as a springboard to create an open identity graph so that we could have everything from potentially your nationality, your age, your educational records, your medical records, everything encrypted and put onto the blockchain and leveraging zero knowledge proofs so that any sort of application can potentially gain access to this information, but always with your permission.
Awesome. And then we'll get into the details of that. But first, I'd love to hear more about yourself. Like, what's your background and what led you to founding Humanity Protocol?
So I've always been a tech entrepreneur. So I was born in the U.S. I grew up in Asia, and then I did my university in the U.S. And then actually quickly dropped out to start my first company. My first company, I grew that company to become one of the first unicorns out of Hong Kong, with over 1,000 employees, over $100 million in revenues. Unfortunately, the company did not succeed because it was predominantly in the travel and hospitality sector. So COVID really affected it a lot. And then, I think back in 2017, 2018, I've started becoming interested in the Web3 industry and crypto, did some investments myself. And then after my previous company, I decided to move into the blockchain space. And one of the key reasons we thought identity is very interesting is because even back in my previous company, we were working with a lot of hotels, and we were seeing that, one of the key things that people had to do when you travel is obviously carry a passport. You go to a hotel, you have to check in, wait in line, do a lot of these things that are pretty cumbersome, right? And then when you think about the rest of the sort of offline applications for identity, we think actually, there needs to be a more elegant solution.
So, yeah, like you said, many other projects and teams have tried to take on decentralized identity or open identity. And so far, none of the solutions have really taken off. What do you think is different about Humanity Protocol that is maybe better positioned to succeed?
So I think there are a couple of things, right? Number one is that ultimately we need to focus on use cases. And I think when we look at identity, it's a very big topic. Too many people, I think, are tackling identity from the perspective of how do I bring all sorts of different pieces of information and attributes onto the blockchain. But I think one of the first things is, what is the use for doing it? Right? Like why would somebody want to put their information onto blockchain, or why would somebody even want to create a DID? Like where is the use for that? And I think for us, one of the key things is actually not so much your entire identity, but starting with one of the most important pieces, which is, as I said, just at least proving that you're a human being. And I think that's actually, especially with the kickoff of all the new technologies in the AI sector, I think it's becoming more and more important, right? If we look at what is going on with all the deep fakes, all the videos that are being generated, scammers being able to make phone calls, it's really difficult to figure out who you're dealing with, or even if you're dealing with a person to begin with, right? You look at ChatGPT, you look at social media, Twitter. There's so many bots, so many accounts that are actually just using different sort of AI tools to create content. So I think one of the key things is being able to figure out whether you're a human being or not, and we've decided to start with that, right? And we do think there's a genuine use case, whether it's in the Web3 world because of GameFi, because of airdrops, et cetera, or even in the Web2 world because of click fraud and digital advertising, in terms of social media and content creation, et cetera, et cetera. So we're designing something that has sort of a use case from day one, and then using that as sort of a starting point to build up the rest of what people would potentially need. But ultimately, when I think about sort of any sort of product, when we look at something like a digital identity solution, it's generally sort of a chicken and egg. There's always generally a chicken and egg problem, because how do you create applications if you don't have people? If you don't have people, how do you get applications, right? So in our case, I think we have sort of an application that people do really need. And through a lot of partnerships that we're going to announce over the coming months, we do believe that we are able to onboard a lot of different users.
Interesting. Okay, and then digging deeper in your core focus, which is proving that you're a human, proof of humanity. How do you actually achieve this?
So we think, given the advanced in AI, it's really difficult to do this in a digital way, right? I think there have been sort of projects that try to do that through liveness tests and videos of your face, but right now that's that could be completely fake, right? There are projects that I've looked at, using connecting social media accounts. But it's really easy to create a lot of social media accounts. You just need an email and a phone number, right? And so what we think is interesting is leveraging biometrics, because it's really difficult to fake that. Many different parts of a person's body is unique, right? Your fingerprint is unique. Your palm print, your palm veins are unique. Your iris is unique, right? So, we do think it has to be leveraging biometrics. And what we're starting with is we're leveraging the scan of your palm, so your palm print and your palm vein, to establish that you're a unique human being.
So similar to the WorldCoin approach with the iris.
A little bit similar to the WorldCoin approach. Yeah, so WorldCoin is using the iris. We're using the palm. And we've decided to go with the palm because in terms of the palm print and your palm vein, it's in terms of uniqueness, it's unique for every single person in the world. In terms of accuracy, it's at the same order of magnitude as your iris. It's already a proven technology that different companies are using. Amazon's using it for payments and access control in the US. Tencent is using it for payments in China. So we're confident in that there's general confidence in its robustness, but I think one of the key things that's different from an iris scan is that we think it's way less intrusive, right? Instead of scanning your eyeball, which is a little bit scary for a lot of people, your palm is a lot more accessible, and it also opens up room for use cases, as I said, like payments, in a decentralized way, potentially. That is not possible with potentially asking somebody to, scan their eyes in order to go buy, a soft drink, right? So we're using the, palm-based biometrics to start for establishing, sort of proof of humanity.
So do you require I guess, similar type of dedicated hardware?
So it's interesting. We will actually have both a hardware and a software component, right? So there will be a software component where you can scan your palm, and there is a degree of uniqueness with being able to just use your smartphone camera. It's not completely foolproof, because ultimately, if people are able to just do it on their own device, there is an ability for people to potentially find ways to fake it, to spoof it. And then we do also have a hardware component where people will physically have to use to be able to enroll. So, sort of call it a super light proof of humanity, and then a more robust proof of humanity that we're implementing.
I see. So will the software version be available for maybe some use cases that, but limited to others where only the hardware will be
exactly
used?
And with the way we think about this is it's going to be ultimately up to our applications and partners, right? And when we think about it, we think, okay, you know what, maybe it's software, and then it's software plus hardware, and then down the road it's maybe even potentially your KYC, maybe it's even your education, maybe it's different sort of things that you have on chain. And so if you think about it, a game that is really just trying to verify that you are a human being instead of a bot, and there's not much financial incentive to the game, might actually simply use a software-based solution. An airdrop, because there's money involved, might actually require you to have been hardware verified, right? And then, maybe it's even looking at something like an enterprise DeFi platform, an RWA platform that wants to verify that you are a citizen or not a citizen of certain countries, you have certain amounts of wealth, et cetera, might actually require different sort of information. Somebody who's looking to hire people might actually even want, the proof of where they went to school. So the idea for us is we're leveraging verifiable credentials in many different ways, so that ultimately applications can choose what they want to use in order to verify somebody.
So how do you start adding all these additional layers of information?
The way we are doing this is we're building a system that is somewhat unique to other sort of identity-based projects, where we're kind of decentralizing different pieces of it, right? So what we call, there's a role in Humanity Protocol called identity validators. And imagine that to be potentially a bank, potentially a government, potentially the university that you went to, right? They are able to actually issue essentially an ID or a credential for you, stipulating that you have these characteristics. And then what happens is that if an application or partner wants to check against this information, make use of this information, then they would have to pay. We have also a role called ZK proofers. They're almost nodes that are helping encrypt and decrypt this information. Then what happens is an application would actually have to pay a little bit of fees in the form of the HP token. To the ZK proofers, to the network, as well as to the identity validators, in order to make use of this information.
So why do you think this type of decentralized, like blockchain-based ID is needed? Like, why not just use, centralized organizations to prove all these things?
I think it's because ultimately I think there's a couple of things, right? Number one is, safety and security. I think, right now, most of our data information is living on big centralized tech platforms, companies. I think there's sort of a desire for more and more people to move away from that. It's getting pretty scary when you browse websites and whatnot, and it pretty much knows everything about you, right? The advertising that it's feeding you, it's literally all tailored. I think it's becoming more and more dystopian. So I think that's one reasoning. And then the other thing is, I think ultimately having a decentralized network for identity actually plays very well into what blockchain is designed for from day one, as well as what potentially a token is useful for, in the sense that it's an economy where people or identity validators, ZK proofers can get rewarded for the work that they do. And there is a genuine utility for that token because applications or companies actually do need to get hold of this information. And ultimately, this information about a person is entirely self-sovereign. And you as a human being owns that information yourself.
What do you mean by, like, in what way can people control this information with this system versus with like the traditional system? Because with Humanity Protocol, you'd be using the like existing, existing verifications and information that are already live, right, on centralized databases, and then porting them over to this identity. So like, how does this ownership work?
So I'll give you an example, right? Mm-hmm. And this is actually further away from proof of humanity. But let's say take something as simple as where you went to school. Mm-hmm. Okay, where you went to school. There are a couple places that have that information. One is the university that you actually went to. They know where you went to school. The other is LinkedIn. You actually give that information to LinkedIn for free. You don't get anything out of it. And they actually monetize that information through ads and through selling sort of premium subscriptions so that recruiters can reach out to you to try to offer you a job, all these sort of things, right? And then the other interesting thing is, even with something like LinkedIn, you don't really know whether it's true or not, right? It's self-reported. I could say I went to the school when I haven't. There have been many cases of people doing that, in fact, to land jobs, right? So what we are saying is, imagine the university that you went to is an identity validator. They actually issue a certificate saying that Camila went to this university, studied this, had this GPA. Okay, that information you control. It's encrypted. Nobody can see it. Okay, imagine now some guys want to build a decentralized LinkedIn. Okay, and you want to be a user there. What can actually then happen is that you grant access to this information on a case-by-case basis, or only if somebody makes a payment to this. And at any point in time, you can also revoke this information. And what is also interesting with ZK proofs is that we can allow people to check against information without you revealing the full extent of that information. What I mean by that is, for example, let's say you went to university in the US, okay? What can happen is the question posed can be, did Camila go to university in the US? Yes or no? Instead of actually having to reveal which university that you went to, right? So these are all things that we can do through Humanity Protocol. And with existing systems, the best bet is you have to put all that information into LinkedIn. They can do whatever they want with that information. And actually, even more importantly, whoever needs that information can't even tell if it's true or not, because you could have just put in whatever the hell you want. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah. So what's your go-to-market strategy or your plan to onboard all these institutions as identity? What is it? Verifiers or validators?
Identity validators. Yeah. We are working through. So I think it's two things, right? So we're starting with actually the Web3 world, where we're starting with proof of humanity, checking whether you're a human being or not, getting as many people on board as possible. Because as you can see, even recently with a lot of the big airdrops, there's a big problem with civil assistance and making sure that you are actually reaching unique people rather than just farms and bots. So we're starting with that. So a lot of the partners will be in the Web3 space. A lot of the users will be Web3 native users. And then the idea is that as we grow that user base out, The intention is to start partnering with different sort of institutions where they want to check against different pieces of information, right? And the good thing with crypto is that there is going to be some sort of incentive mechanism in place, so that potentially, just now that example where your university issues a credential for you, if somebody needs to check against that information, even the identity validator, so your university, might get a little bit of a fee cut, right? By doing so. So this is essentially sort of creating an economy for your information while you control it, that sort of rewards everybody who's a player as part of this ecosystem.
Got it. Okay, so initially you'll be focusing on Web3 native use cases. I guess, like, I don't know, the one of the most pressing ones, like you've mentioned, is airdrops and making sure that these token distribution systems aren't being civil attacked, right? So specifically, what information or like which identity verifiers will you be able to onboard to help crypto teams verify that their users are human?
So the very start of this is really the biometric solution,
right?
Where the identity validator, the very first identity validator, is actually the foundation behind Humanity Protocol. Okay. And so that's sort of the very first piece, and then we will start building out different sort of verticals where we partner with other identity validators.
Great. And then, so one piece is airdrops, and then another piece, as you mentioned, is with the rise of AI, this line between what's real and what's fake online is becoming very blurry. So what role do you hope that Humanity Protocol can have there?
I mean, I think one of the key things is we're not anti-AI, but I use AI tools all the time, right? But I do think as AI tools become more and more useful, there is value in humanity, right? Like, even if we don't think about financial means, right? Like, there is a reason why art collectors are willing to pay for art that people have made, even though if you look at a lot of, there's a lot of AI generated art, but the most expensive pieces are largely still created by humans. Even the most expensive NFTs are created by human beings, right? There is a value in your favorite movie stars, your favorite pop stars. They're all human beings who are creating, who have created, who use your creativity to create things, right? Right now with technology, it's super easy to use AI to generate any of that stuff, right? But I think ultimately it's important for people to know. It's important for people to know whether this is a human being or not. And so that's what we're trying to solve. That's not tied to the financial piece. And then if we tie it into the financial piece, as you mentioned, the airdrops, or even in advertising, right? Like all the click fraud, all the bots that are browsing websites and generating revenues for ad publishers, even though no human beings really looking at these ads, is posing a problem, right? And one of the simple reasons is because human beings, when you look at advertising, are consumers. Right? Advertising, say you're interested in buying a car, showing you an ad of Toyota or Lexus or, Tesla is valuable. Showing a bot advertising for a car is not valuable, right? So I think these are things that we hope Humanity Protocol can help solve in the long run.
Great. And then where in the development phase, or like where in your roadmap are you in?
We are actually launching Testnet in 2049 in Singapore. In fact, we actually have a space where people can actually go and scan their palms to test it out. And they'll be part of the testnet network. So when mainnet comes, they will have to redo it. But there is already the ability for you to enroll, check if you're a unique human being, and also verify who you are based on the testnet network that we have.
Nice.
So in case you or anybody who's watching is going to be in Singapore, they should absolutely drop by our space.
Awesome. Yeah. When do you plan to launch mainnet? Or is there a date set? Or
we're hoping and targeting towards the end of the year.
And will that immediately have a token, or is that for further down the line?
It's up in the air.
Okay, got it. Well, that sounds like super interesting. So yeah, you heard, Terence. If you're in Singapore, go check out the new palm scanner to be a part of Humanity Protocol. And then just to wrap up, I'd love to get your long-term vision for Humanity Protocol. What role do you hope it will have in decentralized identity and Web3 more broadly?
I do think, there are potentially multiple solutions and whatnot, but we hope to be sort of one of the most widely used one. We believe that, we can scale, we can move very quickly, get as many people on board as possible. And I think one of the key things is that as Web3 continues to mature, we mentioned airdrops, I mentioned games. If we look at governance, you look at DAOs, I think, right now it's all about, proof of stake. The richer you are, the more votes you get, right? It would be really interesting to get into governance structures where it's actually one person, one vote, right? Or at least there's a component of it, right? So I think having, and then the other thing we think about is that with blockchain, everybody's very focused on higher TPS and lower gas fees. Right. I think every single blockchain is trying to sort of solve that, whether it's layer 2, layer 3, new layer 1s. The problem is this: if there is no ability to verify that you are a human being and potentially prioritize transactions for human beings, the day any blockchain actually has utility and people are building out financial incentives, whether in the form of airdrops or whether in the form of different sort of rewards, bots will just swarm. Bots will just swarm it, and it'll essentially make any blockchain pretty much unusable. Right? Like if you remember back in the days with Ethereum or Polygon, when there were big NFT claiming in events, any sort of thing, because the ability for people to create an unlimited number of wallet addresses anonymously and just leverage computer programs and bots to fight for transaction speed. Essentially, as gas fees get lower and lower, transaction TPS gets higher and higher, there will be more and more bots. And there really needs a solution where whether it's blockchains, whether it's projects, they could actually check if somebody's a human being or not.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be key going forward for this industry to continue developing. So yeah, I'm super excited to see the progress of Humanity Protocol, and excited to see it the testnet come live in Singapore. Thank you so much, Terence, for joining me. It was fascinating.
Thanks a lot, Camila.